The Fox and the Hound. Disney's The Fox and the Hound is tragic enough as it is. A story about a curious fox named Todd and a sweet puppy named Copper growing up as best friends, only to be torn apart by the world around them. But in the original 1967 novel by Daniel P. Manix, there's no friendship. It's a story about obsession, revenge, and the long, slow death of the natural world. Todd is a red fox kit, raised by a hunter after his mother and siblings are killed. He eventually escapes to the wild, where he becomes clever and dangerously bold. He begins taunting a pack of chained hunting dogs, until one day the youngest dog, Chief, breaks loose. Todd escapes by running along a railroad track, jumping clear at the last second. Chief isn't so lucky. He's hit and killed by the train. The master, Chief's owner, buries Chief and weeps. Then he turns to his remaining dog, Copper. From now on, Copper is trained to hunt only one fox, Todd. And so begins a decades-long vendetta. Each winter, the master and Copper set out. Each year, Todd survives, but with growing cost. His first litter of kits is gassed to death in their den. His mate is caught and killed in a trap. A second mate is lured out and shot using the cries of her dying young as bait. As the years pass, the countryside disappears. Farmland becomes suburbia. The forest shrinks. The foxes that remain grow sickly and desperate. But Todd stays, and the master keeps hunting him, because it's all he has left. When rabies spread in the fox population, the city asks the master to help exterminate the remaining foxes. He sets traps, lays poison, and joins mass hunts. But Todd escapes every time. That is until the final chase. Copper tracks Todd for over a day. No guns and no traps, just dog against fox. And finally, Todd collapses, dying of exhaustion. Copper returns home, a hero. But time passes, and the master is told to move to a nursing home. No dogs allowed. So he takes Copper outside, tells him to lie down, pets him a bit, and covers his eyes. And then he pulls the trigger. The end. Frozen. Disney's Frozen is one of the studio's biggest hits. A queen with ice powers, a quirky sister, talking snowmen, and a lesson in self-love. But Frozen wasn't supposed to be that at all. Originally, it was meant to be a more direct adaptation of The Snow Queen, H.C. Andersen's 1844 fairy tale. And that story is much colder. As with every good story, it begins with the devil. He creates a mirror that distorts everything good and beautiful, magnifying only the ugly and cruel. The devil tries to show God his invention, but the mirror shatters on the way, scattering razor-sharp fragments across the world. Some pieces lodge in people's hearts and eyes, turning them bitter, angry, and blind to kindness. And the devil laughed at the misfortunes he has created. And two of those fragments strikes a boy named Kai. Kai, formerly a good little boy, becomes cold and cruel, and he hurts his best friend, Gerda. One winter day, he vanishes. He jumps into a sleigh driven by a silent, white-robed figure, the Snow Queen. She kisses him once to numb him from the cold, and once to erase his past. Kai forgets his family. He forgets Gerda, and he forgets himself. But Gerda doesn't forget him. She sets out alone, barefoot and heartbroken, with no magic and no powers. Only her love for Kai. She journeys through enchanted gardens, robber camps, and endless snow. She only receives occasional assistance from talking reindeer, and a Finn woman who declares that Gerda is armed with the greatest weapon of all, love. Gerda finally reaches the lands of the Snow Queen. She rules over the snow bees, swarms of stinging, sentient snowflakes. When Gerda reaches the palace, they attack. She prays, and her breath forms angels that drive them away. Inside, Kai sits alone on a frozen lake, the mirror of reason, trying to form the word eternity from shards of ice. If he succeeds, the Snow Queen will release him and give him a pair of skates. But he doesn't recognize Gerda. She runs to him and weeps. Her tears melts the ice in his heart. He begins to cry. The mirror splinter dislodges from his eye and he remembers her. They dance, and the ice shards dances with them. When the shards grew tired, they fell perfectly into place, spelling eternity. Kai won his freedom and a pair of skates. They return home and find it the same as it was when they left it. But they are not the same. They've grown up, and the snow has finally melted. The end. Tangled. Disney's Tangled is a fun adventure about a lost princess with magical hair, raised by the evil Mother Gothel. She escapes, finds love, discovers her royal identity, and gets her happily ever after. But, as always, the Brothers Grimm version is different. It all starts with a pregnant woman who craves Rapunzel, rampion, an herb only growing in the garden of a powerful enchantress, Dame Gothel. She becomes obsessed, telling her husband that if she doesn't get it, she will die. So, the husband sneaks into the garden and steals some for his hysteric wife. The first time, he gets away with it. The second time, he's caught. Dame Gothel offers him a deal. Take all the Rapunzel you want, but in exchange, she gets their firstborn child. It seems like a fair deal, so he agrees and leaves with the herb. When the baby girl is born, Gothel immediately takes her away. When she turns 12, Gothel locks Rapunzel in a tower with no stairs, no doors, only a small window at the top. She visits her by climbing the girl's long golden hair. One day, a prince hears Rapunzel singing and watches Gothel climb the tower. He mimics her, and soon he and Rapunzel fall in love. They plan to escape together, but Rapunzel lets it slip to Gothel. Furious, Gothel cuts off her hair and banishes her to the desert, pregnant and alone. When the prince returns, Gothel lures him up with the severed hair, then reveals Rapunzel is gone forever. In despair, he jumps out of the tower, landing in thorns that pierce his eyes, blinding him. For years, he wanders the wilderness, until one day he hears Rapunzel's voice. He finds her, and she begins to cry. Her tears fell into his eyes and restored his sight, and he sees their twins, the children he never knew he had. He takes her back to his kingdom, and they live happily ever after. The end. The Jungle Book. Disney's The Jungle Book is a musical adventure. A carefree boy named Mowgli sings with a bear, dances with monkeys, and learns the meaning of friendship in the jungle, before returning to his own kind. But Rudyard Kipling's original Jungle Book, published in 1894, is no bedtime story. In Kipling's version, the jungle is a brutal place. Mowgli is a human child raised by wolves, but he never truly belongs, neither to animals nor to men. The jungle isn't a musical. It runs on a strict code. Power, obedience, and violence rule everything. Even Baloo and Bagheera are nothing like Disney's version. They're strict mentors. Mowgli is beaten, scarred, and shaped into a creature the jungle fears, but never fully accepts. When Mowgli tries to live among humans, they reject him too. So he returns with elephants and razes the village to the ground. And Shere Khan, the tiger, isn't some smooth-talking villain. He's a bitter cripple who kills Mowgli's adoptive wolf father. When Mowgli defeats him, he does so by burning the jungle. The fire drives Shere Khan into a ravine, and Mowgli watches as a buffalo stampede tramples the tiger to death. There are echoes of British imperialism in the background of the story. Kipling saw order, law, and hierarchy as necessary, especially in colonized lands. Mowgli, the outsider who brings discipline to the jungle, reflects that view. But even the jungle can't hold him forever. As Mowgli grows into a man, he outgrows the wild. In the end, he says goodbye to the animals who raised him and walks alone into human society. But the look on Mowgli's face was not one of joy. The end. Peter Pan. Disney's Peter Pan is a cheerful fantasy. A boy who never grows up, a fairy with attitude, some jolly pirates, and flying children. But J.M. Barrie's original tale is far more complicated and far more disturbing. It begins in London, where Peter Pan visits the darling children and whisks them off to Neverland, a dreamlike place filled with mermaids, fairies, and danger. Wendy becomes the lost boy's mother, Peter their father. They play house. They fight pirates. But something's not right. Neverland isn't a paradise. It's something else. The Lost Boys forget their own names. They forget their families. They even forget who Peter is if he's gone too long. And when they begin to grow up, or if they become too many, Peter thins them out. The book never explains how, but the implication is chilling. And it doesn't stop there. Peter hunts the pirates for sport. And sometimes, in the middle of a battle with the natives, if the Lost Boys have the upper hand, he switches sides and presumably attacks the Lost Boys for fun. He isn't a brave leader. He's emotionally detached, forgetful, and disturbingly childlike in the worst ways. And when Tinkerbell dies of old age, Peter simply moves on. He doesn't even remember her name. At the end, Wendy and her brothers returns home. Peter promises to visit, but as with everything else, he forgets. When he finally remembers, he visits her years later and finds her grown, with a daughter of her own, then a granddaughter, each time thinking they're the same girl at the window. Peter stays young, but everyone else moves on, and he doesn't notice. And thus it will go on, so long as children are gay and innocent and heartless. The end. Anastasia. In Disney's Anastasia, we get a lovely story about a missing... Okay, it's technically Fox, but it's owned by Disney now. Sue me. Anyway, we get a romantic fantasy, a lost Russian princess, a charming con man, an undead sorcerer, and a quest to reclaim her identity. It ends with love, laughter, and the rightful heir to the Russian Empire living happily ever after. The real story? Not quite. The film is based on the long-standing rumor that Anastasia Romanov, the youngest daughter of Tsar Nicholas II, somehow escaped the execution of her family during the Russian Revolution. For decades, people hoped. Several imposters came forward claiming to be her. But Anastasia didn't escape. None of the Romanovs did. In 1918, the Tsar and his family, Nicholas, Alexandra, and their 5 children, were led into a basement by Bolshevik guards. They were told it was for their safety. Then the shooting began. And it did not go smoothly. The daughters, including Anastasia, had sewn diamonds and jewels into their corsets. The bullets ricocheted off like armor. So the guards switched to bayonets. There was no dramatic escape. In the movie, it's Rasputin's curse that sparks the Russian Revolution and dooms the Romanovs. In real life, the Tsar brought it on himself. Nicholas II ruled with divine arrogance. His failures in war, refusal to reform, and contempt for his people's plight fueled the revolution. The Russian people hated the Romanovs because of misrule, not magic. And Rasputin? In the movie, he's an undead lich with glowing green powers. In reality, he was Russia's greatest love machine. A man brought in to heal the crown prince hemophilia. The nobles hated him, so they tried to off him. Turns out he was absurdly hard to kill. Poisoned, shot, beaten, shot again, and finally tossed into a freezing river. And even after all that, the course of death was drowning. So no, he didn't have a phylactery, but it was close. Anastasia gave us a fairy tale of survival, magic, and a missing princess. History gave us the Soviet Union. Pocahontas. Disney's Pocahontas tells the story of a brave, free-spirited Native American woman who bridges 2 worlds through love, wisdom, and song. But the Disney version is loosely based on the life of the real-life Pocahontas, except for the fact that the real Pocahontas lived a short, tragic life, marked by abduction and exploitation. She was born around 1596, named Amanut, and nicknamed Pocahontas, meaning playful one. She was the daughter of Wahunsenaka, also known as Chief Powhatan, leader of the Powhatan Confederacy in what's now Virginia. When the English arrived in 1607, Pocahontas was just about 10 or 11 years old, so there was no romance with the famous settler, John Smith. However, he did claim that she saved his life, but historians disagree on whether it happened or not. What is known is that Pocahontas did visit the English on several occasions and brought them food during times of famine, acting as a symbolic bridge between cultures. That bridge was burned in 1613 when Pocahontas was kidnapped by the English during the First Anglo-Powhatan War. Held for ransom, she was encouraged to convert to Christianity and was baptized as Rebecca and married to a widowed tobacco planter named John Rolfe. She was around 17. The marriage was seemingly voluntary from both parties and was framed as a diplomatic victory, the Peace of Pocahontas. However, Powhatan tradition insists that Pocahontas had been forcefully separated from her Powhatan husband, Kipling, who may have been killed during her abduction. In 1616, the Virginia Company brought her to England as propaganda, a civilized savage to promote investment in the colony. She was paraded through English society and painted in European clothing. She even met the king. But she never saw her home again. In 1617, while preparing to return to Virginia, Pocahontas fell suddenly ill. She died at age 21. Officially, the cause was unknown, possibly pneumonia or dysentery. She was buried in Gravesend, far from her people, her land, and even her own name, Mulan. Disney's Mulan is a story of bravery, honor, and self-discovery. A young woman defies tradition, takes her father's place in battle, and saves China. She returns home a hero, embraced by her family, and celebrated for her courage. The original legend of Mulan is over 1,000 years old, first appearing in the Ballad of Mulan, a folk poem from the Northern Wei era. In it, Mulan disguises herself as a man, taking her father's place in the army, and fights for 12 years. Her comrades are stunned to learn she was a woman all along. She declines power, rejects reward, and simply asks to go home. So all is good, right? Well, not exactly. The 17th century retelling, The Romance of Sui and Tang, offers no such happy ending. Here, Mulan is again a devoted daughter, taking her father's place in the army. But this version unfolds against a backdrop of political chaos and shifting alliances. Captured by enemy forces, Mulan meets Xianyang, a warrior princess who uncovers Mulan's secret and becomes her sworn sister. When the war ends, the emperor offers Mulan riches and a new life. But again, she just wants to go home. But here, everything has changed. Her father is dead, her mother has remarried, and her home is gone. And then comes the final blow. The Khan who rules her land summons her to become his concubine. Faced with this unbearable future, Mulan sees only one way out. She chooses to end her suffering right then and there. The end. Alright, that was the Disney Origins, Part 2. Let me know in the comments which story you think was the darkest and why. Thanks for watching. Cheers!